So this is a customer's tractor. We just got done doing a bunch of work and they want us to hook up the blower and check it out. And the bearings are toast on this machine. A couple ways to tell. If you look on the side here, this bolt is not centered in that hole. If you watch this auger, you can get under it. There's all kinds of play. That should not move at all. It's moving probably at least a ½ inch. You can see that. Should be not be able to move that auger at all. This side's the same. This sprocket moving up and down. I'll turn it on too. This one's an extreme case, but these things should be pretty quiet when they're running. Extreme case of bad bearings. Usually they'll start making some noise and stuff, and that's when you kind of know they're going out. These are past the point of a little bit of noise and actually are pretty worn and almost to the point where it's dangerous and do some serious damage to the machine or somebody. Alright, so we're just going to swap the bearings. This is actually a really nice blower. It's a fairly late model. It's an R model. It's in good shape. I'm really surprised the bearings are as bad as they are, to be honest with you. The rest of the machine, the rest of the blower is beautiful. But depending on your blower, your model number and serial number and year and all that stuff, they're going to be a little different. They used hex bearings on some of them. They use round bearings on some of them. Hopefully your model number will get you the right bearings, but we've seen them switched out, vice versa, over the models. They should have stub shafts on them where the bearings ride in here. But we've also seen where people are putting full shafts all the way through. So each one could be a little different, but this is the basics. We'll do a full snowblower rebuild video one of these days, but this is just going to swap out these bearings quick. Over here, sometimes you got to take the chain and the master link off or loosen the sprocket in the back, depending on yours. Some of them got a slide adjustment and a bolt and a threaded rod back here. This one's got positions for the bearing, so that tightens and loosens your chain up. Some of them have holes here where the auger is actually on a cam and you can move the auger forward and back to the housing. But this one's got quite a bit of play in the bearings and the chain. I'm not sure we're going to have to loosen that chain up or not. So right now I'm going to pull these off. These thin wrenches, these are Capris, but any kind of thin wrench usually works. Or you can grind one down. You got to get down in here and get on this hex and the flats. And this one's got probably the stub shafts in it. We'll find out. This is 9/16 bolt on the end. There's the bolt. Do the other side. Again, get the 3/4 in there. So, as long as you don't have a shaft going all the way through, we can just pull this auger out, hopefully. Again, if your chain's holding you up, you may have to dismember it. Usually if you just spin it, it'll come off. Like that. There's the auger itself. And here's your chain. It's easier to take the chain off and on like this than trying to do it over the sprockets. But if you got to do it over the sprockets to get it off, then What you got to do, here's the master link. So here are the bearing holders, and they ride inside these, I guess you'd call them races. But this stub shaft comes out, and there's a few different ways to get these out. Sometimes they're a little difficult, but okay, so there's different ways you can try getting these out depending on what you have access to. If you thread the bolt back in, it gives you something to work with. You can also sometimes get something in at an angle with a little hook on it and pull them out. Sometimes they come out all right, sometimes they don't. We're going to try the locking pliers with the slide hammer attached and see how it goes. All right, that worked out all right. So this one's got the round bearings and the round stub shafts. All right, that's one side.
You're in the way.
You want to help? So you just thread this in, halfway or so. Gives you something to bite onto. You don't want to screw the threads up by not having enough threads in there. Again, if you don't have a slide hammer, you could take a pair of pliers in here, try hitting it a little bit with a hammer. Now that the other one's knocked out too, you can get something long and hard and go all the way through and try to push it out, but you'd have to center up on it. You don't want to damage this outside piece because it's kind of fragile. So if you can do something along these lines, it works out all right. That time the whole bearing came out, but that's fine because we'll have the bearing out anyways. And now you can press this out or hammer it out or whatever you need to do. We often get people asking how to get the bearing out. So there's a few different ways you can do this as well. You got something similar to this for a slide hammer, a pilot bearing puller, that would work. You can just stick this in and pull it or put it on a slide hammer and that would come right out. But actually, not everybody's got one of these, so we won't use that. The other thing, now that you got a hole here, you could take a 3/4 inch or something a little bit smaller rod and knock the opposite bearings out. I'm just going to use this right now because it's handy and the other bearing's already out, but just to show you. But you want to make sure when you knock the bearings out, if you're putting this on the ground, that you got it blocked up so the bearing can fall if you're going vertical with it. If you're going horizontal, it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to go from this opposite end. Rotate it so you're hitting evenly. Out it comes. So you just want to be careful because these pieces here will crack. You don't need to take those out right now. If you're just replacing the bearings, if these are in good shape, just leave them. We're just doing a quick bearing replacement on this one. All right, so with this blower, the good news is the bearings are the same as the mower deck bearings, so that makes it handy. We've got the hex ones in stock too, but these are way cheaper. We repack these, we pull the seal off and repack them with grease. The bearings come with very little grease, and I don't care what brand it is, where they come from. Today's bearings don't have much grease in them. So if you want to see how to do that, we've got a wheel bearing video on how to repack these as part of the video, so take a look at that. Any sealed bearings, doesn't matter if we're working on garden tractors or farm equipment or big trucks or construction equipment, we pull them and pack them. You want to take these and clean them up. A little bit here, sandpaper, emery cloth, whatever you got. And there's a couple ways of putting these in. These bearings are the same both ways, so that doesn't matter. Just no matter what way you're using, you want to get this thing as straight and as even as you can. You can use a vise, which works well. If you got a press works well. Just make sure everything's straight. Get it in there, take a look at it. If it's a little crooked, just take the side that's a little high, knock it down. Spray a little lube on your pieces and it should go. And that'll get it in started. The last little bit should tap it in. The problem is it comes out the other side, so once you're flush here, if you're in the vise, you can't go any further. Same thing if you're tapping it in. So you don't want to get a socket on this side and knock that inner race. So you don't want to hit the seal, but you want to hit this inner race and make sure the socket's on this inner race. Now it's all the way up here. You can see it came through. Everything spins nice. That's one way of doing it. If you don't have a vise, you can hammer these in. It's not the best way to do it, but you want to be gentle with it. You want to make sure, again, this is sitting in there straight before you start hammering on it. So just tap it in, get it started. Look at it. Right now it's crooked. You can hit the high side down. Gently drive it in. You'll feel it get close to the bottom. And you'll feel it bottom out. And just do the same thing. Flip it over. Again, don't hit your lip, or your seal rather. You don't want to damage the seal of the bearing. Just hold it steady. When I'm working on these, I like to set the other side on a block of wood. Now, these bearings weren't original for whatever reason. Like I said, this blower looks brand new. I don't get it. But they weren't original, and the nut, they were missing the lock nuts on the outside, so they were out. And if you look in here, the back end of this is cracked a little bit, where the retainer for the bearings, it'll be fine. Most of it's there, not a big deal. But these things are very brittle. Now this matters. You want the hex side facing out, and then put a little bit of grease in here if you want to help you go in a little spray lube. But this bearing, we got quite a bit of grease on from repacking it. These, again, I want to make sure they're straight, and then hit on the nut here. You can press these in if you need to. Or you can take a seal driver and hit the seal driver, but they usually go in pretty decent. If you got one side going and not the other, take a big socket and hit the outside lip here. Or if you got a dead blow, you can easily, you just don't want to damage the seal. You'll feel them bottom out. They basically sit flush. Alright, that's about good on that side. Again, use a piece of wood. You don't want to damage a new bearing or the stub shaft. Again, get this sitting in as straight as you can before you start wailing on it. You don't want to play square peg round hole game. So right now this side's lower, this side's higher. Just tap this side easy. If it's going hard, then get a socket out. Right there, it looks pretty even. Again, hit on the center. This one went in nice, it's flush. You got bearings. And that part's done. So next we're going to put the auger in. Obviously the sprocket side goes where the chain is. 9 times out of 10 you're gonna have to take this chain apart unless you got a lot of slack in it, but if that's the case you're probably gonna have to take it apart and tighten it anyways. Alright, so the chain's on the sprocket in the back and it's on here. The key is where these things get lined up. We'll find out. So what we're going to try to do here is, since these holes are all wallered out from the bearings being bad, instead of taking this piece off and welding it, replacing it, or you can, if you got a welding machine, you can weld a washer here, and that'll help. Or you can drill this out and put a bushing in and tack weld a bushing in. But this will be fine. We're going to use a little bit longer bolt, so the shoulder's riding in here instead of the threads like the factory one. We're going to use a big fender washer, and that'll help center it and clamp it, give a better clamping force, and then put the lock washers that weren't on, and hopefully this will work fine. So lining these up can be a pain. I've got an alignment bar on that side, and since we got the chain on there, maybe that side we should have put the bolt in first, but we'll find out. Sometimes if you got 2 people, it'll help. There's not a lot to pry on, so it makes it tough, but sometimes you don't need much. So you want to get it started, and then just send it in a little bit. You don't need to go all the way yet. Alright. We're going to do the same on the other side. There's alignment bars in there. I don't want to drop, but now we got the chain and the bar under the chain. Actually, it'll help a little bit. A little bit. Oh, there we go. Up a little more. Down here. Extra set of hands help. Alright, now that they're both just sitting there loosely, spin your auger, make sure everything's clear. Alright, so now it's going to be a little tricky. Since we know this hole got oblonged out, obviously the way the auger is going to oblong the bottom of it out more. So we're going to pick the auger up, we're going to wedge that bar in there a little bit. And with this heavier fender washer that's at a tighter clearance, this is a tight ID washer, and the lock washer, this should be enough clamping force on there. It spun fine, nothing hit when it was all the way down, so anything we gain, we're going to gain. Remember, you're going to have to hold your inner hex with your 3/4. We used a grade 8 bolt. Hold your flats on the shaft or the hex. Spin it over by hand. Spins nice. chain is a little loose still, but actually it's not all that bad. You could take a half link out if you really wanted to. I don't know if there's enough room to actually move the shaft to the back positions, but the chain's actually not all that bad. But this thing spins. I'll stick the bar under here now. Stick the bar under it. No movement, you'll see that. There's no up and down movement on that shaft. We'll start it up, you'll hear the difference. So that's just a quick how you change the bearings. We'll do a full tear down and replacement of all the bearings and the pulleys and chains and shafts and all that stuff some other video. But if you got bad bearings and you need to get finished up for the storm or the season, that's how you swap those out. It's pretty simple, pretty easy. Just use your head and you can do it.